we begin this very locally focused program with the results of an election clear across the state. Why? To launch this question as elections ramp up, is Florida red or still purple? Voters in Jacksonville elected a new Democratic mayor this week, despite being outspent by her Republican opponent, who also had the endorsement of Governor Ron DeSantis. After a red wave in the midterms, the state legislature, with a 2-to-1 Republican majority, closed a session with a slate of new laws that steer to the right: health care, education, immigration, plus. This week, Florida Democrat State Chair Nikki Fried notched the win and also a record day of fundraising. And she is live with us this morning to handicap that moment. Nikki Fried, great to have you on the program.
It's so great to be back, Lana. Thank you so much.
And I think this is your first time as head of the state Democratic Party, so a new hat for you. Let's start with the win in Jacksonville. A one-off, do you think, or maybe a sign of change?
It's definitely not a one-off, and Florida Democrats across the state and across the nation are celebrating the win on Tuesday. So a lot of things happened. First and foremost, we had a fantastic candidate, Donna Deegan, for mayor, and a great slate of candidates for property appraiser and city council members. But what happened is that Democrats really leaned in on this race, both at the local level, the state level, and also the federal level. We coordinated like we've never coordinated on the ground before. People were able to cross over because Donna had an uplifting message, where the Republicans went even further right. And this is the first time that we've seen an election. This is the first election that we've seen after this atrocious legislative session. So you're also seeing a lot of Republicans and independents that crossed over, not just for Donna, but for the entire slate. This is really a backlash to a lot of the atrocious policies that came out of this legislative session.
So let me talk about a little bit about what you just brought up, because what you're saying is sort of a sea change from what we've seen in the state Democratic Party up through and even after the midterms. I mean, after this legislative session, you see Republicans really energized for the fight. There is energy, there is a fight, there is fire in the belly. And to your point, Donna Deegan ran a sort of a really nice campaign. We didn't really see it in South Florida, but it's a very nice unifying campaign. Did that speak to NPAs, and do you think that's what the edge was?
I do. Even when I was talking to Donna, as I spent a lot of time in Jacksonville, I endorsed her even last year, right after the primary. And so what she really did was bring this kind of breath of fresh air to local politics, saying, look, regardless if you're a Democrat, Independent, Republican, the issue is the same across the board. We want to make sure that we've got, safety in our communities and our streets. We want to make sure that we have economic opportunities for everybody, stop the corruption, stop the internal fighting in local government, and people wanted to get back to governing. And even as I, was talking to her in these conversations and leading up to the election, you even saw comments from me and the rest of the Democrats lifting up Donna, talking about all the things that she wants to do for Jacksonville, where you saw the Republicans spent the entire time attacking her, making false premises, really having lies about her past. And people were just done with it. They said, look, we trust Donna. She's a fantastic individual, has done a lot for this community, and we're going to reward her by the people crossing over. But like I said, it wasn't just a crossover for Donna. They rewarded Democrats down the ballot, having a historic win, the first ever Black female property appraiser. That didn't just happen. That was because a lot of work, a lot of attention, and local politics were just tired of the divisiveness.
Let's talk about down ballot for a second, because you saw, and as we deconstruct and do a postmortem on what the November elections brought and what this latest session brought, you see that the Republican Party of Florida had a very strategic way of not only an aggressive voter outreach, no doubt, and up those numbers, but also really focused not on the top of the ticket only, and really down ballot as school board races, with a very decided effort to stop candidates in those spots. Take that, run with that a little bit in context of what does the Democratic Party need to do now to match that aggressive effort?
And you're absolutely correct, Lena. And this is something that I have actually been saying for quite some years, is that we spend so much time and attention at the top of the tickets, and we don't spend enough time on the bottom of the ticket, the ones at the local level, the school boards, the city and county commission races, even the House and the Senate races. And so Democrats have to get back to what we do best. And that is that the voter engagement, having those one-on-one conversations, going back into our minority communities, we've taken them for granted. Across the board, we took our blue counties for granted. And so what Democrats are going to have to do now is go back to the basics. That's door knocking, that's phone banking, that's making sure everybody is back on the vote by mail list, which unfortunately the Republicans, as of this past year, everybody has to get back on. So if you're listening, please go check your vote by mail. Make sure that you're getting back onto the list. But this is something that was a big wake up call for Democrats, considering that we left 37 House seats open in 2022 and a whole handful of Senate seats too. This is not how you win elections. You win elections by getting the energy, the enthusiasm, the candidates that people know on the ground, people know from those communities and from their engagement on years past. And that's what Democrats have to do. We have to field candidates up and down the ballot, making sure that we're having a local efforts, we're getting back to the basics, door knocking, and of course, increasing our voter registration. That's all coming back inside the party. And look, and I've said this too consistently, November of 2022 was a complete breakdown of the Democratic Party. Everything from not fielding candidates, from not doing voter registration, from not doing door knocking, and that showed. And unfortunately, it was the worst election results that Florida Democrats have ever seen. We have no statewide elected Democrat. It's the first time there's been a supermajority for the Republicans, no statewide elected Democrats since the 1800s. That's going to change. This is not indicative of who we are as Floridians. It was a collapse of the Democratic Party in November.
So now that we have, we've seen that the supermajority Republican effect in the last 2 months in the state legislature are some of the most conservative laws and some of the biggest swing to the right in this state in certainly my recent memory. And I think people watching, to your point, that's part of it. The messaging was part of it. But Nikki, there is a lot of support around the state for a lot of the very conservative laws that are now in place. And then again, there are some that have really very little widespread support if and when you look at polling and you see, case in point is the abortion restrictions to 6 weeks. Not a lot of huge across the board support, although some very intensely concentrated support. Do you think that some of those very strict laws, be it on immigration or abortion or in education, is that a plus for Democratic messaging, or is that going to be something that you have to overcome?
No, look, this legislative session, no one was happy. If you talk to Democrats, well, obviously you've talked to Democrats, they were in a fight for their lives. But even if you talk to Republicans, they were miserable this legislative session. They didn't want to do the governor's bidding, but yet they all conceded to this. And so when you see 75% of Floridians not wanting in a 6-week abortion ban, 71% did not want permitless carry in our state. Not even just permitless carry, it's trainless carry. Now people don't have to go through training in order to have a concealed weapon in our state. 70% did not want the attacks on higher education in House Bill 999, yet they passed it anyhow. People did not want the immigration reform, which now is going to have a detrimental impact on our 3 largest industries in the state. From construction, we're already seeing construction sites vacant. As soon as my ag industry goes back into the field to harvest, they're going to be without workers, and also in the tourist industry. And so what Ron DeSantis has really done is his entire MO to run for president, as he's going to announce from all of speculation for next week. And he's done so on the backs of Floridians. And our economy is going to suffer. And unfortunately, this last legislative session, they continued on these awful culture wars and not listening to the people. But at the same time, we've got property insurance crisis everywhere in the state of Florida. If you can even find an insurance carrier, and hearing reports that next year we're going to see a 40% increase on property insurance, that's on them. That's on the Republicans. We're not handling the day-to-day issues that people in our state actually care about. And we believe that in 2024, the Democrats are going to get rewarded for standing up for those types of fundamental issues that the people of our state care about. We have the largest teacher shortage in the nation. People are not staying here in our state to go to higher education, a tax on higher ed. And there's going to be a pendulum swing, and it's going to be imperative upon myself and the rest of the Democratic Party here in our state and across the country to make sure that we are ready to get that pendulum to swing back, because this was an extreme, and especially those that are coming from all over South America and Central America that have come to South Florida looking for democracy and freedom. And they get here, and you're watching a legislative session where every single day more and more freedoms are being taken away, having elected officials being removed from office. I mean, this was an atrocious year for the people of our state, and we do believe that there's going to be repercussions for it.
Well, we will watch Florida Democrats go from defense to offense under your leadership, and I hope you will return often and maybe do a little bit of debate, because there's a whole other side of the story to all the things that you just talked about. Nikki Fried, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Okay.